Rob to talk you through all this.
Lenin smash TRRS Lenin Nep Fisto.
Hello. Check two. Sorry I'm late. Sorry. This whole starting earlier thing has just not worked out. It has just not worked out at all. Well, excuse me. I had a bit of a late night last night. I'm a little sleepy. I am a little bit sleepy at the moment. I was wondering whether I should even do this stream or if it would just be better to just punt till tomorrow. But you know what? I thought, why don't I rally myself and hang out for at least a couple hours? Maybe a slightly more low energy, a slightly shorter, reduced version today. I've eaten well for once. Tom Kagai soup, Thai green curry with rice, Panang curry with rice. Plenty of leftover for tomorrow. Wonderful. Sounds great, Diego. I just had a tuna panini. It was very good. Tuna, Swiss cheese, some onion in there. I don't know what else is in there. It's good though. It was good. This thing, rather than starting the stream at the normal time and just eating my panini in front of you all, I watched an episode of Cheers and ate my panini and drank my Coke. I might have a second Coke though because I still need more caffeine. Pork chop sandwich, says Shazbot 5000. All right. Did I make it? No, I did not. I got it from... You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
This guy's still yapping.
Oh my goodness. Hello, really chill guy. 34 months of tier 1. That's such a long time. Very close to the 36... The highly exclusive 36-month badge. The pearl badge. You're about to upgrade. You're about to upgrade the badges from the prestigious gold to even more prestigious pearl. No, I didn't make the panini myself. I got it across the street. I got it at a place near where I live. What's after pearl? I don't know. I'm gonna have some time to come up with that. No, I'm not going to brown. I'm not doing that. I was saying I think after 3. I think the next one's gonna be 5 years. So I think we're gonna be good for a little while. I can come up with some other kind of perverse bodily function that could be referenced in the next one. Anyway, it's just a place in my neighborhood. It makes very, very good pastries, bread, little lunch things, paninis, crepes. I'm so fortunate to live in the neighborhood that I live in. There's such really great stuff to eat over here. Like right in walking distance of where I live, there's so many fucking great places. A 5-year anniversary is the wood anniversary, so it should be brown. What's the wood anniversary? What is that? What is this? What American weird tradition is this? which neighborhoods do I notice in the hit squad? The thing is, I don't mind telling talking about my neighborhood. I never know. Like Emperor's New Clothes. Oh, and thank you for the 11 months tier 1, by the way. Excuse me. Emperor's New Clothes. Thanks for that. I think you're fine. Like, I don't mind telling you, but you never know what kind of weird creeps are watching this, though. This is what I try to keep in mind. I wouldn't mind being totally forthcoming about my neighborhood. I love my neighborhood. I never know what kind of weird creeps are going to be tuning in, though. Not you. I'm a weird creep watching, but respectfully. As if many of you are weird creeps, but you're not going to come here and, like, bother me. I'm going to be targeted by an OSINT investigation. The OSINT bros are at it again. Bother me with friendship. That's right. Here's one thing I will say. Here's one thing, kind of an exciting thing that I can talk about right now. Because I was out last night at this kind of like media mixer thing. I've been doing more stuff lately to try and like go out and meet with other people that are working in kind of like the lefty spaces in Montreal and being part of the media and kind of developing a little sort of local crew of people that we hang out and we do stuff. And so I went to this mixer last night to hang out. That's why I had a little bit of a late night. You hang out and mix with all the other celebs. That's right. So went to that last night, and so we went to this venue. It's a venue in Montreal on St. Catharines, very near Concordia. It's in like wants to become the Sean McKelvey of Montreal. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly what I want to do. If I can get some crypto guys to give me a bunch of money too, I would have no problem with that. All the greats are here. All the big names, all the stars have turned out tonight. I was there with last night. My friend Nashua was there. Nashua Khan. She's kind of a celeb on Twitter. She has clout. She was there. Nashua's my friend, and we're actually kind of planning on maybe working on some stuff. Everyone flocked to Rob's happy hours to kiss the ring. Anyone remotely touching the political power anywhere would need to be fucking drugged and shanghaied to be ever show their faces like where I'm at talking about stuff. They would be like, I will not be caught dead there. My career is over. The moment that I'm linked to you in any way, my entire career in politics is over. That's the ring kissing that I would be giving for the politicians here. Anyway, so some of the people that I work with here, including Andre as well from the Harbinger Media Network, we've been talking for a little while, but starting to do some live stuff. He was seen with the Soviet Union as good guy. This like Stalinist Hamas sympathizer. No, thank you. This person will never work again in politics. We've been talking about doing some live stuff for a while, and so we went to hang out in this venue, like in the basement of this church on St. Catherine last night. We actually went like up into the church, like in the middle of at like 11 p.m. at night when no one was there in this big vast church. It was like kind of interesting. I was drinking wine up there. And anyway, we're talking about putting on an event in probably early December. So if you do live in the Montreal area or like anywhere remotely close, I know we have some people in Ottawa. We got some people like kind of near here. We don't have a ton of people from Montreal in this community, but there's a couple people in the surrounding areas. And anyway, I think we might be putting on some kind of an event featuring Call of Duty Reserve the Jet. That's good. Yeah. It's actually Jordan. It's too bad that you didn't get a chance to come up before you moved all the way across the country, because now it's significantly more difficult. But it would be cool if you eventually did show up here sometime. But I think we're going to do an event sometime in early December, probably featuring me, Nashua, who some of you may know, and Paris Marks of the Tech Won't Save Us podcast. So we would do some kind of, I was in Montreal recently, zero mixer invites. Well, that's it. It's like there was nothing going on. There was nothing happening there at that time. So anyway, this would just be kind of like, I don't know what it would be. It's like a live talk, a live podcast, just like kind of a fun event to go to, have a little conversation, talk about politics, talk about interesting stuff. It would be like a BYOB thing in this really cool venue. And would be kind of like a party thing after as well. So it's like, it's fun, it's political, it's entertaining. It's like a physical, like a party that you go and hang out and have fun at. And I think we're going to try to start doing some of that stuff kind of regularly or semi-regularly. I think the December would probably be like the pilot version. It's something that I've been thinking about for a while, doing more live stuff, live performances or these kinds of events. It's been really cool and sort of a cure for alienation to be connecting with one another online. But I think I have something, I'm kind of interested in trying to take that online kind of community building stuff and bring it into like a physical space and start like holding some regular events, get people together, get people, like-minded people kind of hanging out and talking with each other, have good conversations and guests and stuff like that. Anthony Blinken on the guitar for the pre-show, of course. Yeah. Hey, Nudlocked, how's it going? I didn't get a haircut. I don't think I got a haircut since the last time you were here. I am a mullet guy now, though. My mullet is coming in pretty nicely. It's really hard to show it to you, though. It's hard to show it to you. Is this like an eyes wide shut type mixer? Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. No, it would really just be a chance to get some people in real life together. Like I said, have fun, do something that's entertaining and fun and cool, and try to start having some like conversations about things, but in public rather than on the internet. I think it could be fun. Montreal's a good city for it. I think I like the prospect of trying to build a kind of community here, like in real life. I just think it would be something that would be cool to do. The first Rousseau Institute Summit. We like that kind of stuff is actually in the works as well. I really do need to launch the Rousseau Institute website. That's gonna be a priority for me over the next couple of months. But yeah, there's a couple of things that we're kind of planning right now to start doing some live events. There's tentative talk of a Toronto thing as well. That's more in the future, and I don't want to give away too many details, like because there's stuff that's in flux. But there are efforts underway to start doing some live events regularly or semi-regularly here in Montreal. Some more stuff in Toronto, around Canada. We're working on a little bit of stuff here. We're working on some stuff over here. So that's what I was doing last night. I was just kind of hanging out with those people and meeting some other people. There were some like journalism students there who were hanging out. They were picking my brain about Twitch streaming and stuff. A couple of people actually recognized me. That was kind of strange. I'm used to going to places like when I'm meeting with people and they're like, "What do you do? Like, what's your job?" And I'm telling them, and I'm kind of embarrassed and like, "Huh?" Like, and they look at me like I'm a weird person. It's weird for me to go out into situations where people are like, "Oh, you're that guy. I know you." That's very strange. That's very strange for me. I'm not used to that at all. I mean, Jordan. I don't if Jordan's still there too. We talked about doing some live stuff for the conventions as well, which could be also very neat as well. Which would be going closer to where a lot of you are, considering a lot of you are not in Canada. Yeah, that's something I've really wanted to do for a while. So I'm really kind of looking forward to getting going with that, get that started. Start meeting some people in real life. Start trying to do this kind of commentary, but like in a live social context. Someday we'll be able to say we knew Rob before he founded the Institute. It sounds so ominous. It sounds so ominous. I can tell you as well that I saw this kind of blog and podcast thing called Visoral Music. 3 old hipsters just trying to stay current, making a podcast about Bandcamp acts like yours. And they said the wonderful Rob Rousseau released some beautifully subdued electropop. Give it a listen and get wrapped in a warm blanket of synths and hushed vocals. So I got a review. I got someone actually said something nice about me, about my music. That's kind of nice too. That's very rewarding for me. Oh. Institutionalize me, please. We're all going to be institutionalized. Probably what's really going to happen is I'm going to be locked up when the World War III really kicks off in earnest. And then probably just going to be like, get this guy in jail. Cut this guy's mic. Get this guy off of social media. Get this guy out of social spaces. That's more likely that's what's going to happen. I think I'm going to have another Coke. I'm going to have a second Coke. A second Coke has hit Rob's mouth, I guess. One sec. Two Diet Cokes, make it 3. I'm not driving. I'll still keep drinking that garbage. That's me. That is me. Chin chin. Oh. That's good. I saw their new Powerade bottles. I haven't seen that. I'm not really a big Powerade drinker, although I guess sometimes I'll have it. Pretty rarely, though. It's a pretty rare occurrence. Oh, that's good. I really just do genuinely like this product. I'll always be more of a Diet Coke man, but this Cherry Coke Zero. Why did they change the name from Coke Zero to Coke Zero Sugar? I think that's so stupid. What is with that? It's so funny to have 2 different versions of a sugar-free soda as well. What a silly economic system we have. Ugh. Okay. Well, I guess I shouldn't chit-chat too long, because I got started late here. I will announce after always being a hater, I'm on the Coke Zero Sugar train. Wow, that's interesting, Mike. I can't stand the regular Coke Zero Sugar. but I love the cherry. Go figure. I don't know. You figure it out. Yeah, it's Rhetoriku. It's very good. Seriously. And I don't say that lightly. Okay. Well, yeah, as I said, I shouldn't chit chat too much, but yeah, if you are in the Montreal area or anywhere you think that you could like make the trip here, if you want to, in early December, it's looking like we will be doing some kind of a live event of some kind. Whether you want to call it a live podcast or just like a show, an event, I don't know what you call it, but if you're able to do that, I encourage people to come down for that. And it's just a wonderful city to hang out in also. Yeah, I would like to look at the Al Jazeera video. I think that's good. Even though, and we're going to watch it. I think I did mention this yesterday, though. I do think it's true that, like, you can get bogged down in focusing on this specific incident and the he said, she said narrative. Because when I feel like, like I said yesterday, I'm going to go ahead and just assume that the country that's dropping 6,000 bombs, that has targeted other hospitals before, that has bombed that specific hospital before, that called and warned and mentioned that they were going to bomb the hospital, I'm inclined to believe that they're the ones that did it. And I think when we do get in this back and forth, and now Israel said this, but now let's look at the evidence and like, let's debunk this and debunk there. It's in a way you then lose sight of everything and you get fixated on this one issue while all the other atrocities ongoing that no one disputes just continue. That doesn't mean I don't think it's a good idea to look at the video, but like, I think probably we should be able to take a firm stance on that and just assume that the country that is just constantly doing war crimes right now, that is going on TV saying that they consider the people that they're doing war crimes against to be like subhuman and they intend to do ethnic cleansing against them, and who lies every single time they get caught for carrying out some kind of barbaric atrocity. I'm inclined to believe that they're probably lying right now, and that that they're responsible for the bombing. But we're still going to look at the video. I'm interested to see the sort of the debunking, and I'm glad to see that this is happening. I think that's really good, but I think it's important to kind of just take that stance firmly, kind of before even engaging in any of that. Like I was saying yesterday, all the OSINT guys, like all the Bellingcat and the ASPI guys, well, not so fast here. Here's this parking lot. I've gone into MS Paint and put a bunch of like red diagrams on it. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. This is what happens when I'm chugging Coke while I'm trying to do serious journalism. We have this picture of this parking lot, and I've gone into MS Paint and put a bunch of red lines on it and diagrams. And this proves, and it's just like, what are we doing here? I don't need to look at this. This means nothing to me. Your little picture of a parking lot with red diagrams on it means nothing to me. Everyone's just an expert on impact craters. This is not consistent with a JDAM. Fuck off. Like, you know what I mean? This means nothing to me. I don't care about your little diagram that you've done. I don't care. This is my stance. And I'm not going to walk back, my condemnation of this brutal crime because there's these like state-sponsored and CIA-linked OSINT guys running this kind of like interference campaign, going, well, hold on now. the very same people that spend their whole careers like analyzing satellite photos of Xinjiang to accuse China of having a vast concentration camp system hidden in plain sight. All of a sudden, they're really concerned with debunking claims about Israel's war crimes. I think we can see what exactly is going on there. You know? I've got a master's in artisanal rocketry. It's so stupid. Like, all of a sudden people become the experts on these kinds of things. Like, I'm never going to sit here and pretend to be this like big war guy. Oh, this is consistent with this munition and this impact crater and this, like, fuck. I'm not doing that. I am not doing that. Yeah, imagine just doing all this work for the CIA or Mossad, but for free. It's not for free in some cases. Like we saw with Bellingcat, who has taken money from the NED. They've taken money from the NED. Excuse me, I keep misspeaking because I'm tired. They've taken money from the NED, so it's not even for free. Holy shit, this was almost the exact conversation I had this morning. I was told it was low-key racist to go ahead and place blame on the war-criming colonizer, no matter the proximal cause, because I was robbing Hamas of agency. Oh, Barbara. Oh, no. Oh, no. Using the weird, like, liberal therapy language to obfuscate war crimes is really something else. We gotta hold space for the IDF press release here. We gotta hold space for the IDF when they explain this kind of thing, and it's really like, it's really triggering to their generational trauma when you don't just take what they say at face value about the war crimes that they do. Like, what are we doing here? Like, if there's a critique of wokeness, you know, whatever that is, however ridiculous that's become, it's the way that liberals especially will use this kind of like language that's supposed to be like emancipatory. It's supposed to be, you know, references to like colonialism and all these things, and they twist it around to justify the various things that it's like, this kind of language is meant to undermine and explain. We got to listen to the lived experience of the indigenous Israelis. We got to do land back for the indigenous Israelis. Like, come on. I would like to look at the Al Jazeera thing. None of that rant was a way to say that we shouldn't do that. The poor indigenous Israeli lives 90% of their life in Brooklyn, New York, and now lives in a stolen Palestinian home in the West Bank. I mean, there's just been this nonstop stream of like TikToks of white American women in Israel, and we're supposed to believe that this is the indigenous population to this land. And there's just a bunch of white women with American accents talking about baking cookies for the IDF and stuff. It's like, who is convinced by this anymore? Like, really? I'm sorry. I'm sorry if this is insensitive, but like, give me a break here. Excuse me. Did you get an invite to Piers Morgan as well? No, I did not, Daka dude. I should be getting these kind of invites. funny watching MSM run with, well, of course the Arab countries just don't believe Israel. And all these fucking Democrats going like, yo, you people believe, American media believes Hamas about this hospital bombing. Hamas is the one. It's not Hamas saying that the hospital was bombed. It's everyone that was at the fucking hospital. The doctors that were there. It's every single person with two eyes and a brain. It's not Hamas. And you've got like progressive heroes like John Fetterman posting this genocidal shit. What a mask-off moment this whole thing has been. These motherfuckers like John Fetterman. Oh, you're so great. Let's talk about your epic clapbacks on Twitter to Dr. Oz. Oh, he's poor. He's a big small bean. He's getting treated for depression. We have to hold space for him. Oh, he doesn't want to wear a suit. He wants to wear a hoodie. What a cool guy. And then he's like, no time for a ceasefire. I want more dead kids. When they've killed over 1,000 kids in Palestine, John Fetterman says, no ceasefire. No ceasefire. I want more dead kids. My name's John Fetterman. Like, fuck you. Disgusting people. These are absolutely repulsive people. Obviously clueless about what's going on there. I don't think he's clueless. I think he knows exactly what's going on there and he supports it. This guy fucking loves Israel. He does. And look, that's the thing. It's like, I'm not fucking... I'm not playing this game where I talk about how great someone like Fetterman is for progressive values when they support genocide. Sorry. That's going to be a red line for me. It's a red line for me with our political class here in Canada. And I think it should be a red line for people that that are going to be asked to vote for the Democratic Party in a year. They're going to say it's the most important election of your lifetimes. I think that's a perfectly valid reason to not want to support a party that oversees genocide. Like, there's people in the Biden administration quitting now because they're like, we can't get them to stop doing this. And people in the Democratic Party are going right along with it. They love it. Like, would John Fetterman be better for like working people than like Dr. Oz? Probably. Yeah. Probably working people in his state. I think so. Yeah. But I think it's a totally valid reason to not vote for someone when they openly support genocide. When Israel is killing thousands of people with American bombs, including over 1,000 children at this point, and you sit there and use your platform and say, no ceasefire. No ceasefire. Now's not the time to talk about a ceasefire. I'm sorry, that's disgusting. You're a disgusting, repulsive person. Why does that always happen? It's truly disturbing that members of Congress rushed to blame Israel for the hospital tragedy in Gaza. Who would take the word of the group that just massacred innocent Israeli civilians over our key ally? And again, it's not taking the word of Hamas. That's an insane way of framing that. Now is not the time to talk about a ceasefire. We must support Israel in efforts to eliminate the Hamas terrorists who slaughtered innocent men, women, and children. Hamas does not want peace. They want to destroy Israel. We can talk about a ceasefire after Hamas is neutralized. No word for the collective punishment. No word for the thousands of dead civilians. No word for the no word about the blockade. No word about settlements. Fuck this guy. Sorry. Yeah, well, that's the whole idea. The idea that Israel or the IDF is trustworthy when they talk about these things is laughably stupid. Laughably stupid. Who have repeatedly lied over and over and over again. Every single time they commit one of these fucking atrocities. I think just instantly believing what they have to say is preposterous. Repeatedly bombed hospitals. This is what I keep saying when it comes to this hospital. Yeah, I'm going to believe the country that has dropped 6,000 bombs on Gaza, that has killed thousands of people, that has bombed multiple hospitals, that bombed this specific hospital, that called this hospital and told them that they were going to bomb them. Yeah, I think that they did the bombing. That's my big, crazy, far out, radical belief. That's not believing Hamas. That's just not being a fucking idiot. And a genocide supporter like John Fetterman. Genocide John, you should call him. Like, we can talk about the ways that, like, progressives have kind of failed that moment and have failed to take bold stances. You know, we've talked about that, and we can continue talking about that. But that John Fetterman shit, that's just like full-throated support for Zionism and genocide. Like, that's like right-wing in terms of the actual, like, Knesset in Israel. Like, there's people in Israeli parliament that have more progressive views on that than John Fetterman does. John Fetterman of the Democratic Party, who are also fully endorsing this, all of this. The president just went to see the prime minister and give him a nice big hug and smooch yesterday while they're killing thousands of people, thousands of kids. And the Democratic Party supports this.
On the 17th of October 2023, hundreds of Palestinians were killed when the Al-Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza was bombed. Officials in Gaza blame the blast on an Israeli airstrike. The Israeli army denies responsibility and claims the attack was due to a failed rocket launch by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They say they used Al Jazeera footage to allegedly confirm these claims.
But you're asking me for proof? You don't need to get proof from me. All you need to do is switch over to Al Jazeera, who broadcasted it live, and you can actually see. I got a screen caption just for you to see. This is Al Jazeera from last night.
Our digital investigations team, SANAD, decided to investigate these claims and conducted an in-depth analysis of this Al Jazeera video, along with several other videos from multiple sources, and established a detailed second-by-second timeline of the events. By analysing Al Jazeera's live stream starting at 1840.
From the so-called democracy of the UK, the second unelected in a row, Prime Minister Sunak went to Bibi and acted all buddy-buddy as well. This is the ultimate mask slipping moment. Everyone around the world recognizes now this dynamic. And all like that clip from Ali Abumina, what he was saying, all our bullshit lectures about human rights, everyone around the world, if they didn't already realize this, and most people did already realize it, but now it's right there in front of everybody, forever. It's being written in the history books. all our enlightened ruling class, to a person, all just supporting this every step of the way.
The team was able to identify 4 Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, targeting the area near the hospital, starting at 18:54:28, then 18:55:03, then 18:57:42, and then 18:58:04. That's military time for just before 7 p.m. local. The team cross-referenced this video with another, captured by a camera situated south of Tel Aviv, showing a wide view of the Gaza Strip. That video shows a series of rocket launches from Gaza. That video clearly shows how the Iron Dome intercepted these rockets. Going back to the Al Jazeera live feed at 18:59:35, we can see a single rocket launched from Gaza. This is the rocket in question. This rocket can also be seen on the Israeli video. 15 seconds later, Al Jazeera's live feed shows that the same rocket was intercepted at exactly 18:59:50. This interception has the same afterglow seen in previous interceptions. A closer look at the video captured by the Al Jazeera live feed shows the rocket being completely destroyed and broken apart in the sky. According to all feeds and videos analyzed,
yeah, the Iron Dome does work when it's being used to defend Israel against homemade rockets made in people's garages that do not have the capability of blowing up and inflicting the kind of damage that what we saw.
Rocket was intercepted and was the last one launched from Gaza before the bombing of the hospital. 5 seconds after that interception, an explosion in Gaza can be seen, followed 2 seconds later by a much larger explosion. This is the strike that hit Al Ahli Arab Hospital. As a result, Al Jazeera Digital Investigations team found no grounds to the Israeli army claim that the strike on the Al Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza was caused by a failed rocket launch.
And again, folks, I think it's important to debunk this, but I also think we can get bogged down in this now debunking their lies, which ultimately obscures the ongoing atrocities, which they don't even deny, you know? What does it say? A comparison between the bombing of the Baptist hospital yesterday and another Israeli bombing earlier. In both bombings, similar bombs had been apparently used. I mean, listen, I'm not one of these armchair war guys. You know, again, the impact crater doesn't seem consistent with it. Where the fuck are you, Mr. Impact Crater expert? Please tell me where you got your impact crater knowledge. In what war zone were you? You're literally just some guy. And people eat it up. I woke up yesterday to all this, the parking lot diagrams being shared, and all these people that were denouncing the missile attack previously were saying oh, well, maybe I need to walk this back. Even Mike from PA, I saw. Mike from PA, in probably a pretty stupid thing to do, bet Ben Shapiro $10,000 that it was going to be an Israeli airstrike, And then I woke up in the morning. He was like, I was heated. I was angry. I was reacting before information came in, and I will be donating $10,000. And it was just like, he's probably going to end up being proven right. But because he was also doesn't want to, like, he's getting confused by all the misinformation as well. You know, I don't mean to make fun of Mike, but it's like, that's like I was saying yesterday. I don't even think it's helpful to be like walking back your condemnation of the thing. Like, oh, I reacted before all the information was coming through. Like, just there's no point. There's no point in doing that. And we were right anyways. We were right because we have two eyes and we understand what this conflict is about. We know that Israel is bombing Gaza and has dropped 6,000 bombs and has bombed many other hospitals, has bombed this particular hospital, and they bombed this in this incident as well. Yeah, OSINT freaks, fuck all, have steered this Discord. And who are these people? They all got their start talking about Syria, which was ultimately, from the cool lefty anarchist perspective, promoting Western destabilization and regime change in Syria and Western proxy wars, arming these like Al-Qaeda guys and fundamentalists to engage in a proxy war. That's where they got started. And then they became Ukraine experts, and now they're Israel and Palestine experts. Yeah, the anti-authorians who accept money from the NED. Give me a fucking break with these people. Stop listening to these people. If I see these folks like fixating on an incident like this, you got to understand why that's going on. You got to understand that that's immediately suspect. Stop listening to these guys. And I'm not even saying to listen to me. Like I said, I'm not a war expert. I don't understand what different fucking munitions look like, different impact craters, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. I'm not going to try and pretend to anybody that I have some kind of deep knowledge about military strategy or weaponry or something. But I do have two eyes and a brain. And I actually don't think it's that hard to figure out what is going on in most of these cases. Yeah, absolutely, Emperor's New Clothes. Any real anarchists are the ones too busy focusing on helping their community and not debating and doing State Department propaganda for free or not for free, wink, wink. I couldn't agree more. There's a lot of, I don't agree with anarchists a lot on it when it comes to, like, foreign policy stuff or imperialism. Many of these folks are active in their communities, are helping people, have really great values, and I like and respect a lot of them. I don't like and respect people that are apologists for empire, though. That I have zero respect for. So this seems to be this seems to be escalating now. They did, unless I'm mistaken here, they seem to have announced, this is 1 hour ago. 1 hour ago from BNO News, Israeli officials commit to Gaza ground invasion. So, like we said, seems like they've been putting it off. They know that this is going to be a shit show, but it does seem like it is getting underway now, this ground operation. And here's kind of the moment of truth for this conflict, right? Is this going to be a massacre? Is Israel going to finally ethnically cleanse Gaza, or at least northern Gaza? Or continue this like genocidal project? Or is it going to escalate? I think these are the two options that we're going to see right now.
אותו תקיפה קשה. עכשיו התמרון הולך להעביר את המלחמה לשטח שלו. ואנחנו הולכים לנצח אותו בשטח שלו. זה הולך להיות קשה, זה הולך להיות ארוך, זה הולך להיות אינטנסיבי.
Hey, you guys aren't just shooting kids anymore. You're not just shooting and arresting and beating kids that are throwing rocks at you now. Now it's going to get a little bit real for some of these people.
המפקדות הכי טובות שלנו, הכוחות הכי טובים שלנו, אתם. אני מאמין בכם אמונה גדולה, שלמה, אמיתית, יסודית. אני מאמין בכוח, במקצועיות ובעיקר ברוח של כולם, שתביא אותנו לניצחון. אותו תקיפה קשה. אנחנו הולכים לנצח אותו.
They successfully floated that they didn't bomb a hospital. They feel confident they can do more genocide and deny it. Well, why wouldn't they feel confident right now? Like, they're in the middle of, like, they're engaging in such unspeakable crimes right now. And the American president and the prime minister of the UK both take trips over there while they're doing this to be like, we love what you're doing. Please continue. No problem. Please keep going. Why wouldn't they feel confident that they can do anything that they want? You have progressive Democrats being like, no, they have a right to, it's good that they're doing this. Norm Finkelstein is a good take on this. Well, we watched his conversation with Katie Halper yesterday, actually, and it was actually very interesting. Have they defined their war aims other than flattening Gaza? When Biden says, I hope you win, what does that mean? I think Netanyahu has been outlining what their aims are for his whole career. Right? He's been outlining what their aims are. And this is the culmination of Netanyahu's whole political project. They want one state, Israel, that they control. They want the Palestinians gone or wiped out or marginalized. That's what their aims are. They've not been shy about talking about this. There's been generations of politics in Ukraine, or excuse me, in Israel. Freudian slip there. Where even anyone that remotely is a moderate that supports two states, that supports negotiations or a ceasefire, gets marginalized or they get assassinated. Netanyahu participated in that himself. So yeah, I think that's what the goal is. They haven't been shy about talking about that. So this is the question: is that going to be allowed to happen, or is this going to escalate? It just seems to be the binary choice right now that the world is faced with at this time. I don't know if I'm right about that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is some, but is it possible now to return to the status quo, what it was 2 weeks ago? I don't really think so. Do you? I just don't really think so. I don't think returning to having a ceasefire and returning to the status quo of just everyday violence and genocide that was happening previously, I don't think that's on the table anymore. And that's not an expression of what I want or what I think. That's just stating a basic fact about the situation. So it really does seem like these are the two options now that we're being faced with. Yeah, let's simply return to the conditions that caused the escalation in the first place. That's a good solution. And really, that's in the West. That's pretty much the best we can hope for in terms of actual progressives. If you don't have progressives like John Fetterman openly calling for more genocide, then it's let's return to this what was happening previously. That led to all this violence in the first place. The other rumor was they squeezed this trip ever southward and negotiate with Egypt for funding a settlement. Yeah, but I mean that's ethnic cleansing, right? I mean that's part of sort of option A for them. Wraith, I think we need both of those things. Although I must say, you know, we can criticize sometimes like organizations like DSA for, you know, for whatever reason, but like there's this whole thing right now. This incident is being used as kind of like a Red Scare thing to paint organizations like DSA and try to destroy them. But it's just, I think what we're seeing with DSA is that they're becoming more and more anti-imperialist and anti-colonial, and that might mean that they shed liberals that leave the organization, or they lose some members. But like overall, I think that's a good thing, though. Like I know people in the DSA International Committee who do really great work and have taken really principled stances on foreign policy, and they're out organizing anyone that's in DSA that doesn't want to have that vision, that wants to have this mealy-mouthed approach to foreign policy. Like what DSA is not going to be really like, what is the option for DSA to be like a bigger mass organization that just like takes the energy of social movements and directs it towards voting for progressives in the Democratic Party, who then end up supporting Zionism and supporting supporting NATO and arms transfers to Nazis in Ukraine and that kind of stuff? Like, or is it going to shrink down to a smaller organization that's way more militant and dedicated, that has a genuine sense of internationalism and a genuine sense of like social solidarity and international solidarity, and is rooted in anti-colonialism and anti-imperialism? I think it would be better to have a smaller, more militant organization. Yeah, no, I agree, Ropes and Eden. This is why I do, like, I'm not an activist. I'm not part of any organization. Like, I probably should be. I don't have a lot of options where I am to join an actual organization. I would kind of like to, but this is a key part about being a socialist in the empire, in the empirical core, is having a completely unapologetic and militant approach to internationalism and connecting to other international socialist movements, but also supporting victims of colonialism and imperialism, regardless of what their political leanings are. They're in the Quebec Hojes. It's weird. I don't understand who these people are, genuinely. Like, they run candidates. I don't know where they're getting funding from. I don't know anything about them. You never hear from them ever, except in election season. They run candidates like all across the country. The Communist Party, Marxist-Leninists. Like, I have no fucking idea who these people are. It's really strange. At least in Germany, it becomes more and more clear that the children of immigrants will form the core of any future socialist movement. I guess increasing anti-imperialism in the U.S. left is also due to the fact that socialism is becoming less of a white guy thing. Yeah, and like that's something we should celebrate. You know, to me, being a socialist is allying yourself with the vast majority of the rest of the world in the global south and the developing world. It's the opposite of a white guy thing. We're really trying to destroy our white guy rules-based international order. Like, that's a big part of what it is, you know? I want our empire to end. I want our empire to become destabilized. I want it to collapse. We'll have Greater Albania soon, inshallah. Worldwide Albania. Who says no? Who says no? Anyway, not to put, you know, too much importance on the kind of stuff that I'm doing, but that's exactly why I'm trying to start talking about doing some stuff like in person. And if you're just showing up, we're going to continue in a moment. But I mentioned earlier in the stream that if you're in the Montreal area, we are talking right now and looking at a really cool venue to start doing some like in-person stuff, some live events, conversations, live podcasting, whatever you want to call it. That's also kind of like a party and fun thing. We're trying to build a community. We're trying to like get people together in real life. So early December, if people want to be part of that, I will have more to say about it soon. Like a hoagie eating contest. That's exactly right. I'm just gonna stand in front of a stage and just fill my face with hoagies. Anyway, this seems important too. Like in conjunction with this announcement that they are going to go ahead with this ground invasion, the U.S. State Department has issued a worldwide caution travel alert. Travel.state.gov. Worldwide caution. Due to increased tensions in various locations around the world, the potential for terrorist attacks, demonstrations, or violent actions against U.S. citizens and interests, the Department of State advises U.S. citizens overseas to exercise increased caution. I mean, this is the amazing thing is that, like, as horrible as this violence that we're seeing is, this is sparking a worldwide mass movement. We're seeing massive protests all over in the United States, in Canada, all over the world. I saw there was a massive one in Greece, like all over the Arab world. People are uprising, like even in these kind of like comprador Arab client states. This is sparking a worldwide mass movement. That's why people need, if you're here in the West, Canada, the United States, you need to get off the fence. Stop equivocating, stop moralizing or lecturing or apologizing for your position, and like recognize the dynamic that's being brought to the surface right now and get on the right side. That's what I would say. Are they going to wait for Biden's address tonight or not? I'm not sure. This was a bizarre clip. Like, look at the president of the United States. He's just an absolute joke. Look at this clip. Look at this clip. This is remarkable. This is the president of the United States. Just incoherent. Just an incoherent old man.
Virtually every mass shooting, every circumstance where a large number of people have been victimized and lost, I've spoken to. I learned a long time ago, what you've all learned in your life.
Anthony Blinken creeping around. What's he doing back there? I don't know.
If someone's going through something that is beyond their comprehension, they've ever thought they'd have to go through. If they see someone who they think understands or maybe been through something not the same but similar, it gives them some sense of hope. And I always get criticized sometimes by my staff because when I go to these events, I stay for 3 to 4 hours and answer all their questions. But it matters. It matters a lot. And look, I'm talking, some of you have gone through a hell of a lot more than I've gone through, and a lot more than other people have gone through. and you understand. So it's just people are looking for just something to grab, something that gives them some sense of hope. And that's, if I can do a little bit of that, then it's worth doing. Not for me. So
Listen to this guy. So I was just showing you. I don't, because Old Dutch mentioned that he got one as well. Ever since this shit started, I've had it on. I can't wear it right now. It's going to be too hot. They do. He's missing his presidential amphetamine right now. Blinken's ready to give him a shot in the butt with the presidential drugs.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Look chat, it's genocidal Joe Biden. Get fucked imperialist scum TRRS Rob Knife David 79 Antifada.
Thank you, Gold Greek, for the 200 friend coin. It's funny hearing the text-to-speech say, "Get fucked, imperialist scum." Yeah, Rishi Sunak.
Last 2 weeks, this country has gone through something that no country, no people should have to endure.
What a absolutely cursed flag combination that is.
Through some of the most awful scenes, the spectre of violence and terrorism every day of its existence. And I want to share the deep condolences of the British people and stress that we absolutely support Israel's right to defend itself in line with international law, to go after Hamas, to take back hostages, deter further incursions, and to strengthen your security for the long term. Now, I know that you are taking every precaution to avoid harming civilians, in direct contrast to the terrorists of Hamas, which seek to put civilians in harm's way.
Fuck you.
But I also want to thank you for the support that your government has given to the families of British nationals caught up in this horror, including your efforts to release the hostages, secure their release, and I know that we will continue to cooperate, particularly with regard to the British nationals that are involved. Can I also say that we have seen the scenes over the past day that have shocked all of us, particularly at the hospital, and we mourn the loss of every innocent life, civilians of every faith, every nationality who have been killed. And we also recognize that the Palestinian people are victims of Hamas too. And that is why I welcome your decision
they have to, whenever they talk about Palestinians being victims of Hamas too, they've got it took away from Netanyahu while he fucking laughs to himself.
To ensure that routes into Gaza will be opened for humanitarian aid to enter. I'm glad that you made that decision. We will support it. We're increasing our aid to the region, and we will look to get more support to people as
we're supporting your genocide while we're giving our aid. Like, look, this is not gonna be good. Like, look at the reaction. Look at this. This is really remarkable. Like, people are not accepting this. White House Rep Dilawar Syed speaking at the vigil for Wadea Fayoume, the Palestinian-American child that was murdered by his landlord in a knife attack. That was directly influenced by the kind of rhetoric that we're hearing from the administration. Absolutely disgusting situation. And it's been really sickening, I think, the way that we talk about the violence in Israel. And we need to make sure that, like, synagogues are being guarded by police. We need to talk about anti-Semitism and the Holocaust and all this stuff. Zero effort whatsoever to make the same effort to reach out to, like, Arab communities or Palestinian communities and make sure they feel safe and supported while they're being fucking little kids are being killed in, like, stochastic terrorist attacks inspired by the Democratic Party ruling class. But look, this is not going to go well. A White House rep shows up to his vigil, and listen to the reaction.
President Biden has been very, very clear. There is no place for hate in America. What about the fake news? Not against Muslims. Not against Arab Americans.
Like, this shit is not, like, they're not going to be able to sell this to people. Like, this is going to viscerally disgust so many people, especially young people, young people who voted for the Democrats and have already, just in the last couple of years, to say nothing of the last couple of decades or generations, have just been fucked over time and time again, all the things that they care about. And it's just taken for granted that they're going to support Democrats because Republicans bad, because Trump bad. Meanwhile, they completely fuck this generation over for every single time, every single big initiative that they care about. And now they're doing genocide. And they're supporting this brutal crime.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I mean, the Dems don't care about us.
Thank you, Doc. Not so strange for 6 months. Tier 1. Yeah, I mean, that should be clear. That should be clear. Nothing radicalized me more than Obama's failure. I mean, me too. I mean, as not even an American, but just being a foreigner that was inspired by Obama, and then seeing Obama's foreign policy, there's nothing more the most radicalizing figure of my lifetime. Hands down. You know, this is not going to go well for them. To say nothing of the fact that it's just morally repugnant. Like, there are actually, I've seen rumors of like anonymous staffers that are complaining, which like I don't care too much about, because if you're just complaining anonymously to the press, like you're still a bit helping it, you're still contributing to it. But there's actually people, top State Department official Josh Paul has resigned over Biden's approach to Gaza. In his first interview, he told HuffPost, "I've had my fair share of debates and discussions and efforts to shift policy. It was clear there's no arguing with this one." So, like, I think you see someone with an actual shred of integrity that has actually resigned over this. Like, people are disgusted, and rightfully so. There's a lot of people that I've seen, and it's a small sample size. It's Twitter, whatever. Maybe it's not real life. Maybe it really isn't. But I've seen people that are like, we're totally convinced by the lesser of two evils argument. I'm pretty convinced by that argument a lot of the time. But like, there's people saying like, I can't vote for a party that's paying for this and supporting it. I just can't do it. And that's a totally reasonable moral stance to take. Why would you? Why? How could you support people that are paying for this and supporting it? Then you have that one guy in the Knesset who has been sanctioned for trying to meet with Bernie and failing to try and stop genocide via the settlers. Yeah, I saw he was trying to get a meeting with Bernie to talk about the ways that these settlers are engaging in these constant terrorist attacks, which of course never make the news. These settler terrorist attacks against civilians in Palestine, occupied Palestine, never even makes the news. There's someone in the Knesset trying to talk to Bernie about this, to make this an issue, to bring it to Biden, and can't even get a meeting with Bernie. Yeah, the lesser of the evil thinking got us to a point where everyone in government is pro-genocide. This is, I mean, look how far the Democrats have shifted to the right. And now you just have guys like Gavin Newsom. They're the future of the Democratic Party, and they're just 80s Republicans. They're like 70s or 80s Republicans. And that's the best you can hope for. That's the absolute best you can do. And they'll blame voters when Biden loses Michigan. These heavily Arab-populated neighborhoods that they have relied on, that turned out for them in the last election. I'm going to see if there's any YouTube stuff about this. Axios reports that the U.S. will send tens of thousands of artillery shells to the IDF that were originally allocated to Ukraine. I'm sorry, like if you're in Ukraine and you really thought America was on your side, and you really thought if you just like agreed to become an American client state, they would defend you and protect you. Guess what? You don't trust the United States of America. Don't make deals with the United States of America. Yeah, fucking Sarah Silverman and Amy Schumer are posting like genocide denial. Now, this is where we're at. Jay, I am not repeating that. I am not repeating that comment. I do think if you go all the way back to 2014 and where all this started going wrong for Ukraine, when they started allowing these Americans back into their country to start telling them what to do, would have been way better off keeping a government that was in place, that was neutral, that was going to make a deal with Russia to get natural gas and lower energy costs for people that were there, instead of taking money from the IMF. Look what they got by throwing that away and backing and allowing the US to go into their country and back and going with the IMF and going with NATO and trying to become a NATO client state. That's what you get when you try to make a deal with the United States of America. How many countries need to learn this harsh lesson? They don't care about you. You think people in Taiwan should be paying attention to this? They don't care. They don't care about your sovereignty. They don't care about your democracy. They want to use you. They want you to be a good compliant client state, allow American multinationals to profit from it, and allow them to build military bases on your territory to threaten their enemies. That's all they care about. That's all America cares about. They don't want to protect you. They don't care about your human rights. They don't give a shit. It's true. I'm here to tell you right now. They don't care. It's true. I mean, I don't want to make light of a serious situation, but it's just like, we've seen, how many times have we seen the same thing play out over and over again? You know, it's just happened time and time again. Don't trust these people. Don't trust the Americans. Don't make deals with them. Surely it won't happen to me this time. Yes. This time will be different. This is what happens. Like, you had American political analysts 10 years ago saying, like, Ukraine, you're going to get wrecked. You're going to get wrecked if you keep following the United States, if you keep going down this path. And then you have NATO and the US going like, don't worry, we're going to protect you. Don't worry about it. No, keep this war in the Donbass going. No, that's good. No, we're gonna let you in NATO eventually for sure. Let me just go talk to my friends in NATO, and eventually they're gonna let you in. Absolutely. Don't worry. Trust us. Trust us. We're gonna have your back. We're gonna protect you. They won't. They won't protect you. They don't care about you. They're using you. They're gonna get Gaza this time. I feel it in my gut, unless it expands. Unless it expands into a wider regional conflict, which some people think is coming. People like Professor Marandi of the University of Tehran, who says that a larger war involving Iran, Hezbollah, and others is becoming more likely by the day. So let's take a look at this for the next hour, and then I have to go.
Realizable, but an imperative necessity.
Days after the United
And yes,
Nations
you are actually white people, not
documented
Slavs.
that
Yeah.
Israel
No,
had
we
struck
agree.
a hospital where thousands of Palestinians had taken refuge in Gaza, the hospital suffered a direct hit yesterday. 500 to 800 people are confirmed dead. Many, many more are injured. Huge numbers of those who are dead and wounded are children under the age of 5 and their mothers. Welcome to the Socialist Program. I'm your host, Brian Becker. Today we're talking with Professor Mohammad Marandi. He is an expert on American studies and post-colonial literature.
And Saint Lotus, is that your name? Like, I agree with what you're saying. Say even the most cynical, self-interested Westerners should be calling for a ceasefire because we're not prepared for the impact of a larger hot war in the region. Yeah, and you know what? It's like we are saying that, but it's like I don't think we have any. No one's listening to us. No one's listening to us. So that doesn't seem to be on the horizon. So it just kind of seems like this is just kind of what's happening. They don't care what we have to say either. They didn't care in Iraq, the massive Iraq war protests. They don't care now. They're framing all the exact same tricks from Iraq are being used to delegitimize any pro-Palestinian resistance right now or demonstrations. Oh, it's pro-Hamas. It's pro-terrorism. They're not listening. All they know how to do is escalate these things. All they know is how to fund more wars, do more arms transfers. That's all they know how to do.
At the University
These forces
of
are just
Tehran
in play now,
in
I
Iran.
feel.
Professor Marandi, welcome back to the Socialist Program.
It's like a tidal wave.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mohammed, the
You can go out
people
with a
of the
bucket
Middle
and try
East,
and
the people of the world, certainly even people
stop it
inside
from
the
happening,
United
but there's
States
not
are
really much you can do.
shocked over what's been happening to the people of Gaza in the last 9 or 10 days. There's no question at all that the Israeli Defense Forces are engaged in collective punishment against a civilian population. People in Gaza, 2 million of them live there. Most of the people, or at least half, are children, are under the age of 18. And now we have this terrible attack, bombing of a hospital where everyone knew Palestinians from all over Gaza had taken refuge. The UN said a couple days ago that the Israelis were targeting that hospital. Now it's been basically destroyed. The Israeli government says, no, it's not us. It's a rocket that misfired. It's an errant rocket from Islamic Jihad or something like that. We're not to blame. The Palestinian people and the Palestinian authorities in Gaza say, yes, this was an Israeli airstrike. People all over the Middle East are in the streets. It seems that we are on the verge of a major escalation, given the sheer and obvious barbarism of the attacks on Gaza. Anyway, I want to start there, get your thoughts.
It's obvious that it was the Israeli regime. No rocket could do such damage and kill so many people. Anyone who knows anything about war knows that that is a lie. And the Israeli president, just a couple of days earlier, said there's no real distinction between civilians and the different resistance groups in Gaza. And that is something that many other Israelis have been repeating for days. What is surprising and what is disturbing, just as much as the fact that the Israelis are so genocidal, that's not surprising. What is disturbing and surprising is that Biden would go on record as blaming the victims. And the Western media, the corporate media, the state media, has been trying very desperately to blame the victim somehow so that the Israeli regime can get away with this crime. So not only are they trying to assist the Israeli regime in this regard, but also they are encouraging the regime to carry out further atrocities. Because now the Israelis know no matter what genocidal act they carry out, the United States, the US president, Western governments, and Western media will try to protect them. So these are crimes against humanity, and the Americans and the Europeans and the Western media, for the most part, they are guilty, like the Israelis, because of their support for the regime and for trying to hide the facts about this crime.
People might not fully understand, Mohammed, that a very huge attack against a civilian population target, like a hospital, actually could be viewed as something that was significant from the point of view of military strategy. In other words, not simply an overzealous pilot or missile operator, but something intentional. I'm thinking back to the way the Iran-Iraq war came to an end. In 1988, an Iranian civilian airliner,
I am okay, old
carrying
lady.
maybe almost
How
300
are you?
people, took off from Iran, and a U.S. missile from a U.S. ship shot it down. And at first, the United States said, "Oh no, we didn't do it. It's not us." Then they said, "No, it was us, but it was a mistake." But the U.S. had a very particular goal at that time in the Iran-Iraq war. The U.S. had been flagging Kuwaiti oil tankers that had clearly been supporting the Iraqi
Thank you,
and
Space
other
Robo
Iraq
Dragon.
allies'
14
war
months.
efforts against Iran. This was just a few years after the Iranian Revolution of 1979. And the U.S. had decided that the U.S. couldn't actually defeat Iran, so it wanted to end the conflict, and Iran was obviously still fighting. And the shoot down of the civilian airliner was such a huge event. The magnitude of the violence against civilians, it had a shocking impact. And in fact, at least in armistice, maybe you'll know more because it's a long time ago and you were there and actually part of all of that. That sort of changed the political equation in the Gulf War. Anyway, my point is that targeting civilians is purposeful and is part of military strategy. It's a crime. It's a crime against humanity, clearly. It's a violation of the Geneva Convention. It's a violation of the Nuremberg Accords. But just your thought about that, because the Israelis actually are trying to accomplish something here by killing large numbers of Palestinians in Gaza.
Actually, there are some significant parallels between the two. When the United States downed the Iranian airliner, the Americans lied. The U.S. Vice President at that time, Bush, the father, he went in the UN Security Council and said that the airplane was flying outside its civilian corridor and that it was not rising. It was moving towards the naval ship, the American naval ship, and that it was sending threatening messages to the Americans. Years later, even though all the evidence was there, the Iranians had all the evidence they had the radar, they had the recordings, but the Western media ignored it completely. Years later, Newsweek told the truth. And that is how the United States does things. When the crime takes place, they hide it or they try to fabricate information to muddy the waters. And then years later, when it's no longer a sensitive topic, then the reality comes out. And what the Israeli regime and the Americans and much of the Western media and elites are trying to do is they're trying to raise questions about who actually carried out this attack in Gaza to distract attention away from the Israeli regime's atrocities. But 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when the dust settles, the plan would be to say, yes, it's now confirmed that the Israelis carried out this missile attack and the pilot made an error, or he was, so the reaction will be very little compared to what it would be now if it's very clear for everyone. Of course, everyone in our region knows what happened, and any sane person knows that the Israelis carried it out. As I said before, no rocket that the resistance has, if misfired, could cause that sort of damage. And the evidence has already been shown that there's no chance, there's no way that a rocket could have struck there. So this is just misinformation to help the Israeli regime get away with it.
It just
and
obfuscates.
Yes, why are the Israelis murdering
Get
Palestinians?
5 different
Because
stories
it's not
out
just
there.
this
It just makes
hospital.
everyone confused.
This hospital is the most bloody and the most ugly of the attacks, but it's a fraction of the total number that have been massacred so far. This genocide has caused thousands of
released a
Palestinians to
hype
die,
video for the ground
and
invasion.
well
Oh,
over
good.
1,000 Palestinian kids, maybe up to 2,000, I don't know the numbers right now, have been murdered so far by the Israelis. And the reason is, I think, quite clear. The Israelis want to ethnically cleanse Gaza. They want the Palestinians to leave. They want another Nakba. They want just like
They want a
when
final
the Israeli
solution.
regime was created, and they slaughtered Palestinians and forced the rest to leave their land. They want to do this again. And the irony, of course, is that the people of Gaza are refugees from Palestine. Most of the people of
that's
Gaza
just where they ended
are
up.
actually from southern Palestine. Gaza was a small village many decades ago. And so all of these people fled to Gaza, and now the Israeli regime wants to get rid of them for a second time. They want them to go to Egypt so that they can take the territory for themselves. And the more the people resist, and it is extraordinary, I think it is extremely heroic for these people to stay put. They will not leave because they don't want history to repeat itself. So people remain under fire in their homes, in their neighborhoods, in schools, and in hospitals.
It is incredibly
because
courageous.
they don't want to leave. Because they know if they leave, the Israelis will never let them back. So the objective is shock and awe. It is to slaughter as many Palestinians as possible, to get rid of the population so that the Israelis could have that territory for themselves. But what I find, as I said earlier,
for sure, PM Trio, it's not even Gaza. It's the greater Israel, includes parts of Jordan and parts of Syria. They won't just stop there. This is the irony of the whole comparison of the Israeli-Palestinian thing and the Putin-Ukraine conflict. This argument about Putin that's not really based in any kind of like evidence or reality. Oh, he's going to go after more NATO countries. He's going to take over the whole country. There's not really any evidence for that. He hasn't really shown any indication that that's what he wants to do. Is like people in this movement, in this right-wing fascist movement in the Israeli government are quite open about greater Israel and what their plans to eventually expand even further are. Like they're not shy about talking about this. They're proud of it. But of course, we want to ignore that. This whole idea that they're going to come for more land even after if and when they do successfully ethnically cleanse Palestine, they're quite open about the fact that they are indeed going to be coming for more. So maybe we should start talking about that in our media. I don't know.
Shocking.
Maybe John Fetterman can think about that a little bit.
To which the Europeans and the Americans are going along with this. No criticism whatsoever. In the past, at least the Europeans would criticize the Israeli regime. They wouldn't do anything about it. They'd still continue to fund it and to support it, but they'd criticize it. Now, no, it's just full support. Keep on killing Palestinians. And today, we've seen large numbers of Palestinians killed. Why? Because the Israelis know that they're not going to be punished. They know that they're not even going to be criticized. They know that the West is going to hide their crimes. And this is a repetition of sorts of something that I experienced in the Iran-Iraq war that you raised, and that was the use of chemical weapons. The West provided Saddam Hussein with chemical weapons. They provided the political cover for him to get away with those crimes, and they provided him military intelligence to better use those weapons. And in the UN Security Council, they refused to condemn him. And then only years later, even though the Iranians had provided the evidence, only years later, when Saddam invaded Kuwait, did this suddenly become an issue, and the Americans were talking about Saddam's chemical weapons as if this was a new issue. And Bush at that time, the father again, spoke about how Saddam used chemical weapons against his own people and against the Iranians. Whereas when he was doing those things, it was with the full consent and support of the United States and its European allies.
The day after the world learned about the use by Iraq of chemical weapons, again, as you said, Mohammed, provided by France and the Western powers, including U.S. companies, during the Iran-Iraq War, that was 1983. Donald Rumsfeld, who later became the defense minister, Secretary of Defense under the George W. Bush administration, he was the special envoy to the Middle East from Ronald Reagan at that time. This was 1983. And there's pictures, and people can go on the internet and look it up for themselves. Rumsfeld
this is some guy,
shows
Rob
up
Russo,
in
some
Baghdad.
leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Hello, Majority Report. What is up? Thank you for the raid. A large raid from our friends in the Majority Report. Flying on my paraglider. We don't want to have that kind of talk. We don't want to have that kind of talk in here. Geez, very insensitive. Thank you though for the raid. I appreciate that. Majority Report, please smash the follow button if you can. Please smash the follow button. It helps out a lot. Thank you. We're just looking at this clip from Breakthrough News. this is like so Israel today is really announced, I think, that they're going ahead with this ground invasion. Netanyahu, I guess, put out a whole like invasion hype video, so it seems like that's really happening now. And there's a lot of possibility right now. We're kind of at a crossroads moment, I think, with this kind of like geopolitical situation here, which pretty much has two outcomes, which is that this ethnic cleansing project in Gaza and Palestine, broader Palestine, is carried out successfully, or it's going to spiral into a larger regional conflict featuring possibly Iran or Hezbollah or other groups, or who knows. It seems to me these are the two outcomes that we're looking at right now. So we're just looking at this clip with Brian Becker talking to Professor Marandi of the University of Tehran, talking about this situation, talking about this possibility that this conflict could now expand into a larger regional conflict. So once again, thank you, folks, for joining me. I appreciate the raid a lot. Thank you. Please support the community if you can. That goes out to everyone. Always much appreciated when people support this community. And let's just continue watching this clip. Again, this is Professor Marandi, University of Tehran. It's a really scary moment right now. This really could spiral into something really, really disastrous. I don't think we're nearly cognizant enough of how bad this could possibly get. I'm trying not to be like just predicting the worst outcome or being a doomsayer, whatever it is, but like it's hard not to be pretty alarmed by the kind of possibilities that we're faced with here, of this spiraling into a larger regional conflict and what the consequences of that would be.
Is just hearing about the use of chemical weapons, which were banned after the horrendous use of them in World War I. And he's hugging Saddam Hussein. People would be surprised because Donald Rumsfeld said later, when the U.S. needed a pretext to carry out the invasion of Iraq, the shock and awe invasion of Iraq, in an effort to create a puppet regime of its own making, then Saddam was the monster who had weapons of mass destruction. But
Only Hezbollah will get involved. No one else has any reason to in terms of cost benefit. You're also seeing huge uprisings, though, like all over the world, and even in these like Arab countries that have kind of de facto alliances with Israel because they've been manipulated that way through U.S. meddling and aid. There's people rising up in all these places. They're storming embassies. Like, you know, it doesn't even have to be that any particular state could commit to a broader conflict, but you could see widespread instability and all kinds of chaos and who knows. Are reports of white phosphorus being used on October 10th confirmed? I mean, we saw the footage of it. We've seen footage of white phosphorus being used. I believe that's been verified. True, I just meant state military commitment seems unlikely. It's bad for the region as a whole, obviously. Yeah, I mean, it is unlikely, especially, you know, you talk about Iran. Certainly, they've displayed kind of very kind of an infinite patience when dealing with America. But at the same time, and again, I don't want to just predict the craziest outcome, but we might just be coming to kind of this like a moment when certain nations that have been waiting for a very long time, that have been victims of U.S. empire and imperialism, might see that it's the time to take that fight into like the next level. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I am exaggerating. Maybe I'm getting caught up in all this. I don't want this to happen. Certainly, it's very scary for how this could go. I think that's the point, though, is that it's a moment that's really fraught and that's incredibly unstable. Yeah, nothing will be officially confirmed until Gaza has been destroyed. Exactly, just like the airstrike on the hospital. Oh yeah, by the way, 3 years later, by the way, we did do that, and that was a mistake. Yeah, and we're here. That's the scary thing about this moment. It's this could spiral out of hand even further. You got the Russia-Ukraine front. Taiwan is the last domino to fall. You've got climate change increasing and climate chaos increasing at the exact same time. It just feels like all these forces are just like they're like in this confluent situation where they're all coming together to crash into each other. With our whole fake economy in the balance as well, with pandemics also. It's just like all these like ticking time bombs of our collapsing society and economic system and increasingly destable society are all kind of like coming together at this moment. God, the 30s are going to be fucking crazy, folks. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm really not. It's really scary, honestly. Anyway, I'm not trying to be a doomsayer or trying to be, apocalyptic. I don't have apocalyptic thinking or black pill or whatever it is. I don't want to do that. But it's it's really one of those like when decades happen moments that we're living through right now. The USS Tonkin was shot at near Yemen. You can't do that again. You can't do that one again. Come on. You freaking get a new bit. Please, get a new bit. Tragedy breeds opportunity. And Scam Gun, honestly, that's what I tell myself. I'm reminded myself every time I start getting freaked out about World War III and what that's going to mean for millions of people around the world. I'm very safe. I'm very comfortable. Everyone around the world will be touched by it, obviously. But yeah, the Tonkin, you gotta choose a different bit. But what I was reminded of that was like as scary as it was, I lost my train of thought and then I got it back because I'm an expert streamer. I'm reminded of Mao every time this comes up. I always remember what Mao wrote about this, and he said, "What is it when it comes to World War III? We're going to try to make sure it doesn't happen, but we're not going to be afraid of it. We don't want it to happen. We're going to do everything to avoid it from happening, but we're not going to be afraid of it." And as Mao predicted, this is what I hold on to, as scary of a moment that is. Again, it's not as much me. Everyone around the world will be affected by it, but it's going to be, millions of people in these conflict zones, which is going to be a disaster. As Mao predicted, though, will that be the final defeat of imperialism? Will that be the final kind of catalyst towards a new sort of global society and the triumph of socialism? That's kind of what I have to hold on to in these moments. Anyway, let's go back to this conversation. Excuse me.
Rumsfeld is actually hugging and kissing Saddam Hussein that day in 1983, the day after the revelation comes out that Iraq is actually using chemical weapons. Again, for people who are trying to follow this and may seem confused, the U.S. doesn't actually care about the form of government in Iran or the form of government in Iraq. The U.S. only wants puppets, basically. It only wants proxy forces. And if the proxy has parliamentary elections once in a while, or whether it's a complete, monarchical dictatorship, it doesn't really matter if they're doing the bidding of the United States. In this region, especially where oil and other, it's such a resource-rich region and geostrategically important. I think it's just important for people to recognize that. But Israel, Mohammed, at least since 1967, when the Israelis launched the war against their neighbors, where they stole the West Bank and Gaza and the Golan Heights in Syria and big parts of Egypt, at a time when the U.S. was bogged down in the war in Vietnam and couldn't itself stop what was at that time a rising tide of revolution in the Middle East, the U.S., I think, decided to rely on Israel as the projection of American power, along with the Shah of Iran. It was the Nixon doctrine, relying on Iran under a monarchy imposed on the Iranian people by the United States, and the Israeli government that has parliamentary elections, but nonetheless was a loyal ally or supplicant to the U.S. and as a consequence, a projection of American power. People have to understand that behind the Israeli war and the reason for this seemingly undying support from the United States, now Biden is there hugging and kissing Netanyahu, who is embarked on obviously a fascistic path inside of Israeli politics. This is because the U.S. is viewing everything from the lens of its own geostrategic interests. It's not that they care about Jews, not that they care about anybody. This is like raw power, but sort of dressed up with these other rationales.
Yes,
one of these client states. If you're unlucky enough to become one of these client states of the U.S. Anglo-American Empire,
the United States
they don't care about you.
Is relying on the Israeli regime or has been for many decades, to impose U.S. will on this region. But in reality, at least for the last 2-3 decades, the existence of the Israeli regime has been detrimental to the interests of the United States. The United States is paying a price in every particular way possible because of the actions of the Israeli regime, because it is brutal, because it is barbaric, because it is undemocratic and an apartheid regime. It is hated across the region, it's hated across North Africa, it's hated across West Asia. And it's because of the Israeli regime that U.S. policies in this region are formulated, whether it's against Syria or against Iraq or Iran or in Libya
it's a big
or
part
Yemen.
Of why 9/11 happened.
All of the destruction that we've seen caused by the Americans in this region, which have led to many millions of people leaving the region, leaving for Europe, and causing tensions in Europe because of the rise of immigrants as well as refugees. All of these are because of Western policies. If the United States had not supported apartheid in our region, if Israel was dismantled and a state that was tolerant of that tolerated both Muslims, Christians, and Jews together, then West Asia, North Africa, the whole of the Mediterranean, it would have been a region of peace and stability and economic growth in the south of the Mediterranean and the north of the Mediterranean and the east of the Mediterranean would be much greater and more profitable for ordinary people than today. But instead, we have misery across the region. The United States has destroyed the region, much of the region, and it's all because of the Israeli regime. So it serves no purpose for the Americans. It serves nothing but the interests of an apartheid, colonial, despotic, brutal apartheid regime. And I believe that this situation cannot last much longer. I do not believe that the Israeli regime will last. I don't believe that the Americans can continue to prop it up for a very long time. As the United States and Europe decline, the fortunes of the regime will decline further, because Israel is not a strong regime. It is not powerful. It is a small territory with a small population. What props it up is the enormous amount of wealth and weaponry that the Europeans and the Americans constantly supply. But as the Europeans grow weaker, as the Americans grow weaker, that means that the Israelis also become weaker. So this situation is not sustainable. And however, in whatever way the Americans would like to interpret recent events,
as we often talk about that when it comes to imperialism, right? People try to obfuscate about imperialism because they're like, well, the average person's not benefiting from that. The average person is losing out on that. Yeah, but the people that are supposed to benefit from it, the imperialists, the capitalists, they're doing just great. The United States government is not doing great, but the weapons manufacturers and the people in these circles, the military contractors, they're doing fantastic, and they're the ones that own the country. What's the link to this? I will link it right here in the chat. I really, really recommend that people check out.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Breakthrough News is a really fantastic resource for any of this kind of geopolitical commentary. I think a lot of people
count on me. You're gonna have good old
Western
Rob
media
to talk you through all
even
this.
in kind of independent progressive media are not good enough on this. They're not, including people that I like and admire and respect. I don't think they're good enough on this kind of issue, and Breakthrough News is really a fantastic resource to learn about it. Dan, thank you very much for the raid. I appreciate the raid, Dan. Thank you. And thank you for the 16 months, tier 1, Dan. Dan. Buddy. Thank you. How's the Dan Simpson raid today? How's the Dan Simpson stream today? I'm trying to get better on this issue. That wasn't a dig at you, Dan. That was not a dig at you at all. That was a dig at others. I think you're doing a great job. Let's continue.
Blow to the regime. It was an unprecedented blow to the regime. The defeat that the Israelis have faced,
yeah, fuck you, Dan,
is greater than the defeat that they faced in 2005 against Hezbollah.
I mean, Dan, like, listen, this is what I would say to anyone that has any kind of a platform that's talking about this, you know? And Dan, you get it. I know you get it. But this is what we have to do. We have to hold fast. Stop giving it. Stop going on the defensive. Stop apologizing. Stop equivocating. Stop giving oxygen to their lies and their bad faith. We know that we're on the right side of history. And as hard as it gets, we stay right where we are. And we don't allow people to push us from where we are. Those days are over. Dan gets that. And I would like for some other people to get it as well.
And the atrocities that the Israelis are committing in Gaza, I think, are just as destructive for the image of the regime and for the supposed legitimacy of the regime as the defeat on the battlefield was itself.
The narrative, Mohammed, in the U.S. media, and certainly by the supporters of Israel, is that Hamas carried out this aggression on October 7th. And it stormed into Israel. The Israeli Defense Forces obviously were taken by surprise. Lots of civilians, lots of Israeli civilians were killed. So kind of Hamas started this. Hamas began this. And, you know, if you just look at the story, if the story begins October 7th, it's like if you walk into a movie and you come in like 4/5 of the way through, and
according to liberals, history just started this
somebody
week.
Killing somebody else, you would think like, oh, now I understand this movie. But of course, you don't.
That's the amazing thing about how fucking brainwashed people are in our society. They instantly forget about even recent history, to say nothing of, like, you know, centuries or decades ago. Oh, Hamas violence? Well, that started 10 days ago. What do you mean? Like a child wandering into a movie, exactly. Oh, the Russia-Ukraine conflict? Yeah, that started in February 2022. And everything before that time, let's just agree to forget that and that ever happened. You can show us video clips of us talking about this, American media talking about this constantly, the war in the Donbass. We got tons of reporting on, like, why is our intelligence community funding these neo-Nazis in Ukraine? No. As soon as the conflict starts, let's just forget about it. We're going to all agree to just collectively forget that happened. Like, it's insane to me. Everything before that is Russian disinformation. That's right. And then the same people talk about 1984. I know, it's really remarkable.
I don't understand the movie because you missed the first 4/5 of it. And I think it's important for people to try to understand the context. If we go back,
I really
to the
hope
time
that does not happen.
Since
freelance communist.
Hamas became the elected and, you know, legitimate government in Hamas.
But I share your fear. I fear myself eventually being kicked off these platforms as well.
Periodically, the Israelis and the government and Hamas or the Palestinians come to some sort of an agreement to reduce tensions. And for a while, there's kind of like a sort of an interlude where tensions are reduced. And if you look at this record, and if I want people to go back and look for themselves, each and every time, the Palestinian side is basically adhering to the agreements, whatever they are, these temporary agreements. And then eventually the Israelis start to carry out additional provocations, additional attacks. The tension becomes greater.
That
eventually,
reminds me of something.
Hamas or other
that
forces who are other resistance forces in Gaza start to respond. And then that becomes the pretext, the Palestinian response, which is now framed as Palestinian aggression. And that becomes the pretext for what the Israelis call the occasional mowing the grass, meaning going into Gaza and like basically blowing stuff up, killing lots of people, showing who's boss, showing that the Israelis are still dominating. And then there's an agreement, and then there's a period of interlude, and then the thing starts up again. And again, people, don't take my word for it. Go and do some of your own research to see that this is, in fact, the pattern. My point is, Mohammed, what was going on before October 7th that would have created a situation where Hamas or the Palestinian resistance forces decided at that moment to take the military initiative? And again, I want to remind people, if you think about a war and try to think who is the aggressor and who is the victim of aggression, only by sort of examining who fired the first shot at a particular moment, you're not going to understand very much. In 1830, Nat Turner in the slave revolt in the South took the initiative, and they stormed into some of the slave owners' homes and killed everybody. But if people think back and say, well, the slaves were obviously the aggressors because they, on a certain date, took a military initiative against those who had enslaved them, you're kind of missing the big picture. Anyway, let's just talk about what were the events, what are the things that were so impactful for Palestinians in Gaza and elsewhere in the run-up to October 7th. I think this is part of the story that most Americans, certainly, who are getting their news from the mainstream media, don't know anything about and certainly don't understand.
Well, it's sort of like what happened in Lebanon, and I think I mistakenly said I should have said the 2006 war.
Right.
In Lebanon, the Israelis invaded the country in 1982. And it was during that invasion that Hezbollah was actually created. And Hezbollah led the resistance against the Israeli regime and ultimately expelled them from Lebanon. So Hezbollah was a national liberation organization. And after the Israeli regime was expelled, they kept many Lebanese prisoners and had no intention of freeing them. So Hezbollah carried out an attack and captured 2 Israeli soldiers. And that led to the 33-day war. So if you look at it from the point when Hezbollah captured those 2 soldiers, then you can say Hezbollah started the war. But that's not when the war started. The war started in 1982, when the Israelis captured more than half of Lebanon and captured Beirut, the capital. And during the resistance, Hezbollah and others, a number of their people were captured and held prisoner. So the Israelis had to release them, and Hezbollah captured those soldiers to force the Israelis to release them. So Hezbollah had every right to launch that strike. So if you look at it within the broader context, then everything that Hezbollah did made sense. The same is true in Gaza. In Gaza, we have the world's largest open-air prison, a concentration camp where the Israelis don't allow even an appropriate amount of food to enter. They don't allow certain medicines to enter Gaza. They don't allow sick Gazans to easily go to hospitals for diseases or for problems that cannot be solved in Gaza. It is a concentration camp where people are born and die. And
generations of people.
Every 3-4 years, as you said, the Israelis mow the grass. In other words, they carry out atrocities like what we're seeing right now, where they kill hundreds and sometimes thousands of civilians. They also call it the Dahiyeh Doctrine. Dahiyeh is in southern Beirut. It is a neighborhood which is predominantly Shia, and many people who are supporters of Hezbollah live in that neighborhood. So what would the Israelis do in order to put pressure on Hezbollah? They would bomb the civilians of Dahiyeh. They would bomb that. I was in Dahiyeh a few months before the war in 2006, and I went again to Dahiyeh a few months later, after the war. The whole neighborhood was leveled to the ground. Huge apartment blocks were all leveled to the ground. And these crimes were committed with Western support. And every time they would bring down an apartment block, they would say there was a terrorist in that building. And the Western media would quickly repeat everything that the Israelis said to
frustrating to see the same
murder.
Cycle of atrocity, obfuscation, denial, discourse just play out over and over again for generations. Like, that's the amazing thing about incidents like this week with the hospital. And you see the same thing going on, the same the exact same thing that happens every time and has happened for decades now, literally decades. And it's amazing to me because you see it and you really feel fucking crazy if you're remotely familiar with this, and you see people that you know and you like and respect getting caught up in it. And it's like, you have to just opt out of this. You know what the cycle is. We know that we're right. We know what this cycle is every single time. You can just skip that part. You can skip the whole part where you're like, I don't really know about this. You do know. You do know. You know? Just skip that part. We know what power dynamics are at play here. Because we have basic understandings of recent history. Just skip to the end. Skip to the part where we know what the reality is. You don't have to play this game anymore.
Of civilians. It's like just like the scenes that you're showing right now.
You can apply this
That's
to any
exactly
big
what they would do to
geopolitical
Beirut,
incident
to the
involving these
southern
imperialist
Beirut,
countries.
The Dahiya Doctrine. So the Israeli regime would constantly, every 2-3 years, attack Gaza. So people are in a prison. They don't have proper jobs. They don't even proper food and medicine are not allowed, or adequate amounts of food and medicine aren't allowed into Gaza. The drinking water is, according to the UN,
Seriously, Dave, it's exactly why we need to read theory,
this is
isn't
what
it?
these people, these are what children in Gaza are born and brought up to see throughout their lives. Every 3 years or 4 years, they have to go.
And then we get surprised at what happens when they manage to escape from their concentration camp.
1 or 2 months,
and we're so shocked and appalled.
So they live in terror. So when this attack took place, it was a jailbreak. It was a revolt of the slaves against these despotic and illegitimate and cruel masters. So there is no moral equivalence. The apartheid regime, the colonial regime, where most of its people came from Europe, and many of them don't even look Middle Eastern, they have battered these people for many decades. And these people who broke out of jail, it's worse than a slave revolt, because the slave revolt that you alluded to was carried out by slaves that were brought to America. The slave revolt in Gaza are the slaves who own the land. They broke out of prison and went to see the land of their parents. All of that land belongs to them. These people, as I said earlier, their parents came from southern Palestine. So they are not only slaves, but they're the slaves who own the land. So if in a slave revolt, a few neighbors of the master are killed, or a couple of children are killed, obviously any child that dies, that's tragic. But that does not change the moral legitimacy of their resistance, and it does not create an equivalence of morality. There's no moral equivalence here. It is the Palestinian cause is a just cause, and Hamas and all the other groups have every right to stand up and resist.
And I thought it was really, really valuable yesterday looking at Norman Finkelstein's comments about this, talking specifically about slave revolts and Nat Turner, and specifically looking at the response to the Nat Turner slave revolt from white abolitionists, and looking at what they were saying about that and what they were writing. And I think that can really tell us a lot about this situation and other comparable situations when oppressed and colonized people try and struggle against the powerful forces that are keeping them enslaved. And the white abolitionists, when they were writing about the Nat Turner slave rebellion, were not saying, I condemn the rebellion, I condemn all the violence. They were acknowledging that the violence was horrible, but their attitude was, we told you this was going to happen. This is your fault. This is the fault of the institution of slavery and its defenders. That's who is at fault here. Yes, the violence is horrible, but I don't condemn it. I condemn the institution of slavery. And I think this is how we need to look at this kind of violence when we see it happen in Israel. And that I don't think it's helpful to play this game, and we must, in order that we take it seriously and we keep our places in polite society and we all keep our nice little media jobs that we've cultivated. I must condemn all the people that are rebelling against them. I must condemn all the violence. No, and we can be horrified and scandalized by the violence, but we need to take that horror and direct that into this system of apartheid and ethnic cleansing and settler colonialism. And if you're horrified by that kind of violence, especially when it's violence against kids, you should be advocating to destroy that system. And that's where your anger and your condemnation should go. And if that's like a big controversial thing, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I understand that this is a situation that's somewhat fraught and sometimes difficult to talk about. But that, I think, is the moral stance that anyone should take. Be horrified by that kind of violence against settlers or whoever was the victims of this. Be horrified, and you should condemn the institution of apartheid, of settler colonialism. That's what's causing the violence.
And even if we were to accept the argument that Hamas killed innocent people, and we know that that narrative has been in many respects debunked. The 40 babies that were beheaded, lies. The women that were raped, lies. Even those who were partying, the images that have come out show that the Israelis were shooting from among these people. They were using them as human shields. And of course, some of the people who were in the party also acknowledge this. The footage shows this. There
seems to be a coordinated attack against U.S. resources in Iraq, Syria, and near Yemen
it's
now.
Extraordinary.
And this is what I was saying earlier, right? The idea of this spiraling into a wider regional conflict, it doesn't necessarily even mean that these states are going to officially do anything, but that doesn't mean that there can't be like large amounts of chaos. Because people are rising up. This is turning into a mass global movement. Very real overstretched empire vibes. We are living through a crazy time right now, folks. We really are, and it's just going to get crazier. This is my inescapable conclusion from all this. It's just going to get crazier.
That on the one hand, when the Israeli regime wants to promote their armed forces, they often show pictures of young women wearing tight uniforms and carrying submachine guns to make the Israeli armed forces look really cool and attractive. But then when these young women are killed, then suddenly innocents are being massacred by Hamas. All adults, according to what we hear from the Israelis themselves, join the armed forces. So, no, there is no moral equivalence. The Palestinians are the victims. The Israelis are the people who are constantly carrying out atrocities. And
they aren't even good at their empire management, yet they want it so bad. The funniest thing is that like the U.S. could still be a very prosperous place if they just had kind of like a managed decline. If they recognized that the sun was setting on the U.S. empire and just had a managed decline right now, and they're just like, no, we refuse to manage our decline. We will have an unmanaged chaos decline. That's the American way. It's going out like the fucking guy in Dr. Strangelove on riding the bomb. No dignity. No dignity in our decline. Only chaos. Only conflict. That's the kind of real tragic thing about this. Is it doesn't have to be like this, but people that are ruling us are fucking monsters and criminals. Like that's really as simple as it can be boiled down to.
Atrocities that we're seeing today are more vicious and more devastating than even previous atrocities. And the amount of support, open support coming from Western officials under these circumstances is greater than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, this is a game-changing moment.
A very strong.
There's no going back from this. I really don't think so.
In the U.S. media, Mohammed. In 2018, the same people in Gaza, as you described it, this open-air prison.
We saw what a managed decline looked like when the British Empire declined, and Britain ain't doing so good right now. That's true, but also it's like Britain they were able to have a managed decline because there was a new hegemon that was like going to be on their team. So they went from being the hegemon to being a junior partner. That's not what's going to be happening in this decline.
Didn't engage in resistance. They peacefully protested using purely
stop copying
nonviolent
me.
tactics at
Marty's
what
out
was
there
called the
copying
Great
me.
March of Return, every Friday going to the wall. And hundreds of these peaceful protesters, including children, including journalists, were deliberately shot dead by IDF, Israeli Defense Force snipers. Thousands were wounded. Say it again?
And medics.
And medics,
and
yes.
medics.
Yeah, people who are clearly, had the emblems, the
America doesn't have one of those. No, there's a
medic,
new
they're shot
hegemon in
dead.
place, and we're actually
And
not allowed to be
were
the
wounded. Thousands
junior partners
were
in
shot
that
from
anymore.
with firearms. And I can tell you over here where I am in the United
We keep
States,
spitting in their
there was no
face
big
rather than wanting to
outrage.
work with
there was
them,
no like,
so-
how dare this government shoot down nonviolent protesters? And the reality is that when a government, and especially an occupation government, this was true in India, it was true in Rhodesia, it was true in South Africa, it's true in Palestine. When the occupying government, a government of illegal occupation that seizes the lands of the indigenous people, makes nonviolent protest impossible because it will be met with gunfire, then it makes armed resistance inevitable. So we're silent in the West about the killing of nonviolent protesters and then shocked when people turn to armed resistance. Again, this is the important part of the framing. What happened in 2018 to those nonviolent protesters, you see them right there. They're nonviolent and they're shot dead. They're shot dead. And again, complete and utter silence on the part of the media. So of course we all care about any human being being killed in war, especially civilians. When you see the pictures of people who went to a party and they're now dead, or children who are now dead, regardless of nationality, ethnicity, race, you can't not be moved. You have to be moved. You have to care as a human being. But the selectivity of the who we care about and when we care about them is so pronounced that it clearly has to be understood as propaganda in the United States. It is propaganda when we are taught that, and even some people who are liberals say, well, of course we condemn the Hamas attacks on civilians. Okay, fine. Then when it comes to the mass killing of civilians in Gaza, they say, and we hope to pressure our government to pressure the Israeli government to minimize civilian casualties. Like, in other words, kind of a passive response, not the same emotion, not the same passion about the civilians.
Or with John Fetterman, with John Fetterman, a full-throated endorsement.
But it's a racism that has been premised on really essentially the foreign policy needs of the U.S. government to show that Israel is always the good guy and their victims are always the bad guy. So the people who engage in terrorism against civilians are called actors in self-defense, and the people who fight back against them are considered terrorists. Anyway, this is something we know over and over again. What I want to talk to you about is the big picture here, because you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, that this was a huge setback outside of. Let's not for a moment talk about the terribleness of the loss of human life. Let's look at it from the point of view of the military situation, the geostrategic situation, and the historical situation. That you're saying the state of Israel, the settler project, has suffered a very grievous defeat. You think it's a harbinger that eventually the colonial project will come to an end, that perhaps as happened for thousands of years, or at least a couple thousand years, Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived in this area in peace. Actually at peace, where they were where they were neighbors. That this anti-apartheid vision will return, and I want to also ask you more about that. But also, Joe Biden went to Israel to show his support, but he was planning to meet with Arab leaders in Jordan at the summit to sort of show that the U.S. was not only all about Israel, but it had like Arab government leaders sort of on its side or neutralized. But the Arab leaders have canceled that summit. Again, where is it going? Where are we heading?
Well, just one small footnote before I respond, and that is that with regards to the peaceful marches that we had in 2018, the Israelis were having target practice. They were having fun shooting the marchers.
There's clips of them laughing
near
about
them. They would
sick people.
They would place bets on who could hit who, and often they would target people in the knees.
Yeah,
so
deliberately maiming them. I've been talking about that.
Destroy their ability to walk normally for the rest of their lives. And sometimes their sharpshooters would kill people kilometers away, including a young female medic. If you recall, she became somewhat iconic during that whole affair. But
no condemnation
yes,
from our government over that.
Humiliating defeat. And here in China, I've been in China over the last few days, Chinese colleagues and friends speak of their surprise about the vulnerability of the Israeli regime and the fundamental weakness of the regime, because it always gave an image of itself as somehow invincible and the most powerful actor in that part of the world. But the Chinese say that their image of Israel has changed completely. And the fact that they're massacring people has turned ordinary people against the regime. No matter how the United States tries, no matter the Europeans desperately try to hide the truth and to blame the victims, which itself is just as disgusting and ugly as the crime itself.
It is disgusting.
No one is buying it. No one believes it. And China is far off from the region. Across West Asia and North Africa, the outrage is extraordinary. It is so bad, it is so intense that, as you pointed out, leaders that are very close to the United States refuse to meet and have a summit because they know their people won't accept it. So popular opinion in the region is very angry. Its hostility is not just directed towards Israel, it's directed towards NATO as a whole, and the United States is at the top of the list. Countries that had relations with Israel or wanted to have relations with Israel are now forced to step back. And it comes at a time when the United States and the Europeans are losing a war in Europe. So they are, on the one hand, fighting and supporting the Israeli regime, antagonizing people across the region and across the world, and simultaneously they're losing a war against Russia and Ukraine. Things are not going well for the West, and things are not going well for the Israeli regime. This is not
it's over.
Something that is sustainable for good.
It's over, Brian, folks. I'm sorry to say.
You remember
we're finished.
Apartheid regime in South Africa quite well.
Our empire is destroyed.
I was a
gone.
young activist at that time. So there were two causes that I was pursuing more than any other. One was as a young activist. One was against apartheid in South Africa, and the other was against apartheid in Palestine.
If China's the imminent military threat the USA is constantly painting them as, why would you get embroiled in a second conflict in the Middle East when you're already losing a proxy war against Russia? It's a great question. I think it's because Americans, or the Americans that run the government, or the people that the ruling class, at least, many citizens as well, to be honest, but they worship war and death. And it's basically an arms manufacturing dealer masquerading as a country. And they thrive off other people's misery and brutal violence around the world. That's really as simple as it can be broken down, isn't it? I think they're crazy and stupid too. I don't think it's mutually exclusive. It diminishes something when you just frame them as just being stupid people. They're not stupid. I mean, their actions might seem stupid because they're psychos, but won't be missed. Bozo country. I'm sorry to say, it is a bozo country. It is. Let's be honest with ourselves here. Oil company, weapons manufacturer, and drug dealer in a trench coat. Yeah, and Canada is it's a resource colony, and we supply the lumber and the tar sands. We don't even get to be the hegemon, and we're even more pathetic.
I certainly didn't expect, and I don't think any of those people...
We were the colony of one hegemon, now we're the junior partner of another fucking hegemon.
Guiding me through politics.
Violent murderers.
Encouraging me to support the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, and ANC among other groups, and Nelson Mandela among other resistance leaders. I don't recall anyone predicting the fall of apartheid South Africa.
It's a sad state of affairs.
And so suddenly. The expectation was that it would last a long time, a lot longer than it actually did. So when things begin to fall apart, often it seems things unfold much more rapidly than we predict. I think that the fate of the Israeli regime is sealed. I don't think it will last. I think we will see dark days ahead. I'm not naive. I don't think it will end as peacefully as it did in South Africa, even though what happened after the fall of apartheid was no utopia was created and Many of the injustices remained in place, but that's a different story. But I don't see the regime as being able to sustain itself under these changing circumstances, both in the region and across the world. The support that it needs is not enough anymore. And the antagonism that exists towards apartheid, colonialism, and ethnic cleansing is stronger than it was before. Time will tell, but I'm confident that the fate of the Israeli regime is sealed.
You know, before World War II, when the Zionist movement was one current within the Jewish community in Europe,
in our lifetime,
it was a minority view. Most European Jews were not thinking of going to Palestine or Uganda, which was another option for the Zionist colonial project.
But Rob, it sounds like when you agree with that,
Zionists,
it sounds like when you agree with that, you think Israelis should die, and I don't. No, I don't. But I think that they should go home. They don't. That's not their land. They don't. This whole thing needs to just stop. Just go back to your home. Go back to your own community. You know? I think that would be probably for the best for everybody.
Founders always considered Zionism to be successful would have to be a colonial project, would have to be sponsored by and an extension of one of the colonial powers of Europe. And all of the world at that time was colonized. So it was sort of within the concept of colonization. But European Jewry, which was suffering from even outside of fascism and Nazism and the fascist terror that led to the genocide against Jews and others during World War II, there were pogroms all over the place, Tsarist Russia, Eastern Europe, France. I mean, the level of anti-Semitism and hatred of Jewish people was very obvious, and everybody knew about it, the ghettoization of Jews. But the Jewish people in Europe didn't think they wanted to go to West Asia or to North Africa. They wanted to get rid of anti-Semitism in Europe. They wanted to have the boot heel of discrimination and racism lifted off of their throat. It took really the fascist Holocaust in Europe and the concerted efforts by British colonialism and American imperialism to sort of shift and change the way most of world Jewry thought about the state of Israel. The reason I'm mentioning this is that a lot of times people think of this as a conflict between people or between religions and not recognizing the dynamism that you're mentioning that happens when there are sudden, sharp changes and breaks in history and things that seem impossible, suddenly not only possible, but seemingly inevitable, like the end of apartheid in South Africa. As we're talking, Mohammed, hundreds of thousands of Jewish people in the United States are organizing against the siege of Gaza. They're organizing against the Israeli government's war against the Palestinian residents in Gaza. That doesn't mean they're for this or that group in the Palestinian movement, but they've turned. There's been a sharp change in public opinion, especially among young Jewish people who don't want to be identified with racism, don't want to be identified with Netanyahu's apartheid policy. And perhaps in the first days after October 7th, everybody was in a kind of a state of shock and not moving. But now there are big demonstrations by American Jews demanding an end to the siege of Gaza. I think it's an indication of what you're saying, that ultimately, if the regime in Israel is based on being a settler government with the support of Jews from around the world, and that was pretty obvious in the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, but that is now changing, and more Jewish people are repulsed by these policies, even if they're not 100% with the program of the Palestinian resistance, for whatever reason, they're changing. And I think that's a bellwether. I think that's an indicator of what you said, the sort of the fragility of a colonial project. And I just wonder, as we look at what's going on internally in the United States or internally in Europe or internally in the Jewish community, then there's these other elements of this very dynamic situation, because there are resistance forces in the Middle East. In Lebanon, of course, there is the Iranian government, and probably, and you can testify whether this is accurate or not, very strong sentiment within Iran that's in solidarity and sympathy with the people of Palestine. You have lots of other places in the Middle East where, as you said, people are feeling like so frustrated and so angry that the Israelis are getting away with this in a way, there's not like a regional response. I'm just wondering, will there be a regional response? Will governments or mass movements be stirred to action as these atrocities accumulate? Again, all of these things, all of these component elements of the geostrategic sort of position shouldn't
I
be
always
looked
like when
at
Brian
just
says
by themselves. You have to look
geostrategic.
at the whole mix. To
I've
get
started
a
to
sense
incorporate that a
of
little
where
bit
things are
too.
moving. Anyway, I want to
That's
get your
just a word
thoughts.
you can throw out when you're talking about geopolitics, and you just sound smart
Well,
and
two
like you know
things.
what you're
One
doing.
is I agree completely about Jews, not only in the United States, but across the world, even inside uh, Palestine, or what's called Israel today, a significant minority, not large, but still significant. They have always been opposed to the Zionist ideology and the apartheid entity and ethnic cleansing. And Jews in Europe, in the United States, significant segments of the population have always been opposed to the regime. But that those numbers are increasing, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that alternative media outlets and sources of information exist today, which didn't exist so much in the past. But even in the past, when there was more of a monopoly of information, even back then, there were very heroic Jews in Europe and the United States that stood for the Palestinian people and who paid a very heavy price. They were marginalized. I know a person that you've heard of. She was at some point an intern for APAC. She later on went to the State Department and worked in the White House.
Have the
And she
fake
became a
eye
sharp
contact
critic of
thing
the
on. What is
Israeli
the fake eye contact thing? Like the AI thing? No, I do not.
regime.
What kind of
Supported
question is that?
people in our region. And even though she studied law at the most prestigious university in the United States, she's been marginalized. So and she was at university and no longer teaches at
I
university.
was actually sleeping.
So people have paid
Looked like you
heavy
were staring into my
prices.
soul. I
Jews,
actually have two ping
non-Jews,
pong
but many
balls
people in the United States
with
have
little
paid,
big
and
with
elsewhere have
pupils
paid a heavy
painted on
price
them.
for supporting the Palestinian people and their right to return and their right to live as equal
I wasn't
human
looking
beings.
into your
And we
soul,
should always keep that in
Sachidrito. I
mind.
was just
And we see
zoning
those
out.
voices
Okay,
today
sometimes I zone out. I was listening to
magnifying
the words and I was
and
zoning
having
out.
an impact, a huge impact. Thus, the gathering of American Jews in protest
Yeah,
to
exactly. The
the
Homer
regime.
glasses. That's what I was talking
With
about.
regards to the region, I think that the more the Israelis kill Palestinians, the more dangerous it becomes for the regime.
I'm gonna have to leave it there. I mean, there's a few more minutes of this interview. You know, I recommend people look at the rest of that. I recommend you subscribe to Breakthrough News' content. I really got to go pick up my kid from school in about 13 minutes, so I have to get going. I am a mere 30 subs away from the goal. Barely anything. It's within reach. It's a mere meager 30 subs away from the goal. Now listen, I got started late today. This is a shorter stream, 2.5 hours. You know, obviously I would love to every day get the sub goal. I realize that I probably need to be here on here longer to do that. I get it. But if we could make a little bit of a dent, that would be kind of make it at least worth it for me to do this show today. So if you can, folks, please subscribe to TRRS. Every little bit helps. It's the only way that I'm able to continue to do this show each and every day is if people subscribe to the show. It's $5 per month. It's completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account. It's very helpful. You get all the tiny little images and emotes. You become part of the community, which is very cool as well. He's like to buy his kid a snow cone. I actually got him one of the Halloween themed blizzard, not blizzards, but McFlurries yesterday. He was quite happy about that. Make sure to tip your servers. That's right. We need to get the stream up into Scorsese runtime. Today was just
count on me.
It was a
good old Rob
slower
to
one.
talk you through all
Again, I
this.
was tired. I went out last night. I had a late night. Nace Zero, thank you for the $13.12. That's very kind of you. Thank you for that. And thank you, Hey Antonia, for 22 months of Tier 1. I really appreciate that. So now just a mere 29 subs away from the goal. Can you believe it? We're getting closer every moment. We're getting closer every moment. It's in reach now. I can see it. I can feel it. A mere meager 29 subs to go, which I'm sure is going to be no problem to do in the next 5 minutes. I don't know if it's a motivator at all, but right now we got net locked.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Oh, goodness. Clobocop, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. That's extremely kind of you. Thank you very much. That's a good start. Right now we got net locked at the leaderboard for the gifted subs, followed by Comrade Social Distancing at 18, followed by Crad Babes at 16. So now if you want to get up at that leaderboard, now is your chance. I got another 5 minutes to go and a minor 24 subs to go. That's barely anything at all. That's right, isn't it? I think so. That's barely anything at all. Exactly, Cradbay screaming up the league. Absolutely. So please, again, folks, if you can, support TRRS. I'm sorry to be annoying about it. Again, I've tried not to mention this too much today. Again, it's the only way that I'm able to do this. As you see from the text at the bottom of the screen, right there. I'm not sponsored by arms manufacturers. I'm not sponsored by any government, any 3-letter agency, like the people that fund our brave OSINT warriors. I don't have anyone backing me except you, the viewer, the listener, the chatter. And the only way that this community is able to continue to exist is if people subscribe to this show. I'll support you if you promise a hot tub stream and don't go back on it like Mike from PA. I have promised a hot tub stream many times.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I have promised people that when I get to 1,000 subs, when that day comes, I will do some kind of a tub stream situation. When that day comes. And it's not quite there right now. And believe me, I'm not looking forward to that. So it would be an incredible own. It would be an incredible own on me if that were to happen.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Eigenbat, thank you so much for the gifted sub. And thank you also, Crad Babes. I've been unbelievably generous lately.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We need to get on the North Korean expedition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Could not agree more. Crad Babes, thank you for the 5 gifted subs and the 16 months resub at tier 1. That is fantastic. Thank you, Crad Babes, for that. I really appreciate it. And you're on the leaderboard now. Crad Babes takes on the leaderboard. That's exciting. We got someone else. We got a new champion.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I promised a bath stream. I guess that is different. Yeah, I guess that is different. I don't have a hot tub, though. I don't know how I would figure that out. Diego, thank you for the gifted sub. I really appreciate that, Diego. Thank you. I gotta go. If I would still love for people to continue subscribing, of course. As you know, I must make the number go up every single day. You have about another minute, though, because I got to get going. I got to go pick up my kid. If I don't go soon, I'm going to be leaving him there like Bart Simpson in that episode of The Simpsons. We don't want that. We do not want that, folks. So it'd be not good. We do not want that, folks. So it'd be not good. We do not... Excuse me? Sorry? Almost went down a black hole there. A Rob black hole. We don't want that either. We do not want that either. Like Bart Simpson in that episode of The Simpsons when Homer doesn't pick him up. It's a classic episode. Okay? It is a classic episode. Thanks again, folks. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. I appreciate it. I'm glad to just put a little dent into the sub goal. You know, as you know, I'm trying to get up there every single day, but I recognize as well when I'm tired and I go out and I don't start the stream until 1 p.m. and I have to go at 3:30. I'm not leaving a lot of time to make that happen. That's on me. But thank you to everyone for supporting this show today and always. I gotta go. I'm going to go ahead and raid David now. I'll see you folks tomorrow. It'll be the final stream of the week tomorrow. Should be a good one. And I'll talk to you soon, okay? All right. Goodbye.